She smirked at my wedding, clinked her champagne glass, and called me a gold digger, right in front of my new husband, the guests, and even the florist. She's only here for his money, she laughed. Give it 5 years. Well, it's been 12. My husband's gone, her bank account's empty, and I just struck literal gold. I own the mine, the land, and the company her daddy tried to steal. Now she wants to be friends. But I don't do charity. This isn't just revenge. It's a sparkling empire built from spite, strength, and one savage woman who never forgot the insult. The long oak table at the Huntington estate glittered with silverware, candles, and strange smiles. Mildred Thornton sat between Harold and a floral centerpiece that looked like it was auditioning for the Rose Parade. It was her first holiday with Harold's extended family, an intimidating tribe of wine-sipping aristocrats in cashmere cardigans and pearl necklaces. The stuffing had just made it around the table when she heard it. A whisper, just behind her ear. She's just a gold digger, you know. Mildred's fork paused mid-air. She didn't turn. She didn't flinch. But her heart kicked up like an old washing machine on spin cycle. She knew the voice. Vanessa Huntington, Harold's only daughter and self-proclaimed queen of passive aggression. Mildred smiled, her eyes never leaving the glazed sweet potatoes. That's a shame, she said softly, because I was hoping to dig for respect. Across the table, Harold chuckled at something oblivious Uncle Tim was saying about turkey brining. Mildred kept her cool. She had faced worse. Much worse. Later that evening, as the guests retired to brandy and board games, Mildred stood alone by the fireplace. Her gaze drifted over the ornate family portraits hung in gilded frames. She didn't belong here, not in their eyes. He was the outsider, the interloper. But she wasn't leaving. Not this time. Not until the game was played on her terms. Before she was Mildred Thornton, potential gold digger, she was Mildred Blake from Elko, Nevada, daughter of a miner and a school lunch lady. She learned grit before grammar and how to clean quartz off your boots before she learned to drive. At 23, she had a geology scholarship to the University of Nevada. At 24, her sister died in a car crash, leaving behind 2 small children. Mildred dropped out overnight. She never complained. She never even hesitated. She became their mother. For the next 40 years, Mildred worked 2 jobs. Morning shifts at a hardware store, night shifts cleaning dental offices. The kids grew up, moved away. Christmas cards came. Calls dwindled. Life didn't give Mildred many breaks, but it gave her dignity, and she wore it better than any silk scarf. She met Harold at a gardening class at the community center. He was recently widowed. She was recently retired. They bonded over compost and chrysanthemums. What began as coffee turned into companionship. Mildred never asked for a thing. No fancy dinners. No spa weekends. Just quiet evenings and crossword puzzles. But Vanessa didn't see that. She didn't see Mildred's worn hands or generous heart. He saw a threat. A threat to her father's money. A threat to her inheritance. And Vanessa was not used to losing. Vanessa Huntington lived in a meticulously curated world. Her life was a Pinterest board come to life. Matcha lattes, Pilates at dawn, private spiritual retreats in Sedona. But beneath the soft pastels and designer athleisure was a predator. She watched Mildred like a hawk from the moment Harold introduced her. The first time she met her was at Sunday brunch, where Mildred had worn a blue cardigan with a tiny coffee stain near the hem. Vanessa noticed. Vanessa always noticed. Harold had looked happier than she'd seen him in years, but Vanessa only saw a threat. And now Thanksgiving had confirmed her suspicions. Mildred was gaining ground in her father's life, and if left unchecked, the will. So Vanessa plotted. She started by planting doubts among the rest of the family. Casual comments slipped into conversations. It's sweet that Dad found someone, but she didn't exactly come from much, right? Or, isn't it weird how fast this is moving? Her brothers shrugged it off. Her mother, Harold's ex-wife, smirked and sipped wine. But none of them knew Harold like Vanessa did. He was sentimental. And vulnerable. She knew exactly how to strike. She invited Harold to lunch. Just the 2 of them. A crisp, white tablecloth place in Napa. I just want to protect you, Dad, she said between bites of heirloom beet salad. She seems lovely, sure. But can you really trust someone who's already talking about retirement homes and shared savings accounts? Harold narrowed his eyes. Mildred hasn't asked me for a dime. Not once. Exactly, Vanessa said, leaning in with a concerned tilt of her head. Too perfect. You know what they say about things that are too good to be true. The following weekend, Vanessa arrived at Harold's house with a folder in her bag and feigned concern in her voice. Dad, she said sweetly, handing him a glass of his favorite scotch. I just want you to read this. No pressure. Just something my lawyer friend helped me draw up. Inside the folder was a prenuptial agreement. It was written in stiff legalese with clauses that would make a medieval king blush. 0 spousal support, no access to Huntington assets, even a gag order. Harold looked up from the paper. This is ridiculous. It's just to protect you, she insisted. If she really loves you, she'll sign it. Mildred arrived for dinner an hour later. The table was set, the candles lit, but the tension was thick enough to chew. Harold, clearly uncomfortable, slid the folder toward her. Just look this over. For my peace of mind. Mildred read the first 2 pages, then looked up. Is this from you? She asked softly. Harold hesitated. It's Vanessa suggested. Mildred smiled. Not the soft, polite one. The kind with edge. She pulled a pen from her purse, signed the document cleanly at the bottom, closed the folder and slid it back across the table. Game on, she said. Harold looked stunned. Vanessa looked worried. Because if there's one thing more dangerous than a gold digger, it's a woman with nothing to lose. 2 weeks passed. The Huntington house was quiet, but the tension lingered like old perfume. Vanessa had retreated to her wellness retreat in Santa Barbara. Harold had grown distant, partly ashamed, partly confused. Mildred didn't sulk. She moved in silence. She cooked. He tended to the garden. But in her room late at night, she unfolded something she hadn't looked at in years. Her father's old mining maps. Her fingers traced the faded pencil marks. The topography was familiar. The hills outside Elko, Nevada. Her father used to drag her along on survey hikes, telling her, "The earth hides treasure, kiddo, but only for those who dig with brains." Mildred had the brains. He still remembered how to read the signs. The outcroppings. The mineral veins. Her heart stirred. She searched her closet and found an old green duffel bag stuffed with maps, notes, and a small rock pick. A younger version of herself would have gone straight to the hills. The older version? She opened her laptop, searched for mineral rights forms, and called an old classmate, Dr. Phyllis Yarrow, now a geology professor at UNR. "Phyllis," she said, her voice steady. "I think I found something, and I want to be sure before I tell anyone else." Elko was 6 hours away. The road was long, dusty, and quiet, just how Mildred liked it. Her childhood home had long since collapsed into weeds and time, but the land was still hers. She parked the Camry at the edge of the property and stepped out. The wind bit at her cheeks. She walked slowly, deliberately, as if she were meeting an old friend after decades apart. She reached the ridge where her father once told her he'd found hot rock, a mineralized zone that made his Geiger counter sing. No one ever mined it. There wasn't money back then, but now she had time and purpose. She bent down, scraped at the earth, and picked up a piece of quartz with visible veins of pyrite. Fool's gold to some, a clue to Mildred. The next day, Phyllis met her on the site with a young grad student named Ben. They took samples. They tested for trace elements. They ran assays in a pop-up lab in the back of Ben's SUV. The results were modest but clear. A low-yield deposit of gold-bearing rock across 3 acres. Enough for a small operation. Enough to make Mildred Thornton very, very dangerous. Vanessa grew increasingly suspicious. Mildred had stopped showing up to charity luncheons, wasn't answering calls, and was always covered in dust, literal dirt under her fingernails. Not her usual polished self. Vanessa made a mental note. Something was up. Something sneaky. She decided to pay a surprise visit to Mildred's quaint ranch house. Wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying her favorite faux fur clutch, Vanessa knocked. No answer. So naturally she walked around back, pretending it was out of concern and not obsessive curiosity. There she spotted something strange. A a series of flagged stakes in the ground and a strange humming from beneath the old barn. A portable generator? And was that seismic equipment? Vanessa gasped. What in the Martha Stewart hell is this woman up to? Mildred had been quietly working with a retired geologist she'd met through a local university. Together, they had been taking soil samples and checking old surveys. Mildred had a theory. The land she inherited from her grandfather wasn't worthless. In fact, it sat atop an untapped vein of precious or gold. Real gold. Unclaimed. Forgotten by the family and the mining companies alike. Mildred didn't tell anyone. Not yet. The seismic scanner beeped. Then beeped faster. Mildred and her geologist friend, Dr. Alan Hughes, exchanged looks. Alan adjusted the sensor and nodded slowly. Mildred, you were right. Her breath caught. How sure are you? Let's just say, start thinking about where you want your helicopter pad. They laughed, but the moment wasn't lost. Mildred had just confirmed the presence of a gold-rich quartz vein underneath her property. Her property, not Harold's, not Vanessa's. The prenup clearly stated that premarital holdings remained solely hers. Mildred clutched the edge of the barn's old wooden post, a smile creeping across her face. Her late-night research sessions, the cryptic conversations with old miners at the local bar, the dusty books, every moment had been worth it. She didn't tell Harold that night, or the next. She cooked dinner, made polite small talk, and even massaged his aching shoulders. All while planning. Because if Vanessa thought she'd married a gold digger, he was about to find out who really owned the mine. Mildred moved swiftly. She filed the necessary claims, contacted a lawyer to secure her rights, and made arrangements with a small private mining firm that specialized in boutique operations. Alan helped facilitate the permits, disguising the filings under a generic LLC name, Prairie Earth Resources. Meanwhile, Vanessa was back in gossip mode, convinced something was going on but unsure what. She badgered Harold every morning over Eggs Benedict. I swear, Harold, she's planning something. You know that look she gets when she's pretending to be clueless. Harold sighed. She's planting herbs and reading mystery novels. Let it go. But Vanessa didn't let it go. She pulled strings and hired a private investigator. The man reported back within a week with a photo of seismic gear and a mining application. She's trying to dig gold out from under you, Harold. Vanessa wailed. She's playing you like a fiddle in a hoedown. Harold, though shocked, wasn't sure how to respond. And Mildred? She knew the war had begun. 2 weeks later, the local paper ran a story. Senior strikes gold in quiet corner of Montana. Mildred's face was on the cover, beaming beside a rugged Alan, her business partner. The headline caused a storm. Vanessa nearly choked on her protein smoothie. Harold stormed into the kitchen waving the newspaper like a flamethrower. What is this, Mildred? An article, she replied calmly, sipping her tea. Did you stake a claim without telling me? I did, she replied. It was my land. You said it was worthless. I took a chance. Harold turned red. You tricked me. No, Harold. I protected myself. Something you were never willing to do for me. That night, Harold moved into the guest house. Vanessa called 3 divorce lawyers. And Mildred? She signed her first contract to export raw ore for $1.2 million. Vanessa, never one to back down, convinced Harold to sue Mildred. Spousal entitlement, they claimed. Unfair withholding of marital assets. Mildred, dressed in a sleek navy pantsuit and vintage pearls, walked into court looking every bit the billionaire in the making. She was calm, composed, and more prepared than anyone had expected. Her lawyer laid out the facts. The land was inherited, the gold discovered independently, all permits filed legally under her name. The prenup was airtight. The judge, a fan of no-nonsense women, gave a curt nod. Case dismissed. Vanessa screamed in the parking lot. Mildred, walking past, smiled politely. Have a nice day, dear. Now free of legal threats, Mildred launched her full operation. Trucks arrived. The old barn was transformed into a private office. Investors lined up. Even a reality show pitched a pilot, Gold and Grace, the Mildred story. Harold attempted to reconcile, showing up with flowers. She took the bouquet and dropped them in the compost bin. You married me for my smile, Harold. but underestimated my spine. As her first shipment of refined gold left the property, Mildred toasted with her crew. To every woman who is called a gold digger, go dig. But make sure you own the mine. The town hadn't seen this much buzz since the county fair in 1978. Mildred's name was everywhere. Radio, news, social media. Some said she was lucky. Others whispered she had always been sharper than she let on. But no one, not even Harold, truly knew the full extent of her plans. One afternoon, while Mildred was supervising her crew at the mine, an old Mustang pulled up near the chain-link fence. Out stepped a tall, rugged man in a worn-out leather jacket. "Well, I'll be damned," she muttered. Earl Mitchell, her high school sweetheart, was back in town. They hadn't spoken in decades, not since he'd left for California to make it big as a musician. Apparently, that dream dried up along with his record deal. But his smile hadn't changed, nor had the spark in his eyes. He leaned on the fence. "Heard you struck gold, Millie. Thought I'd come see for myself." She raised an eyebrow. "You here to dig for gold or just trouble?" Earl grinned. "Maybe both." Despite herself, Mildred felt something stir inside her. Not just nostalgia, but a sense of possibility. She wasn't the same girl he left behind. And this wasn't the same sleepy town. Earl offered to help modernize the mine. He had connections with clean energy companies, green tech investors. Mildred listened, skeptical at first. But his ideas had merit. Together, they drew up a plan to make the mine sustainable and community-run. And so, a new chapter began. Old flames, new frontiers. It was Mildred's 75th birthday, and Earl insisted they throw a celebration big enough to match her accomplishments. The invitations were golden. Literally. Pressed foil cards that shimmered like sunlight. The venue? The same country club that once turned her away for being just a housewife. This time she bought the building. Mildred arrived in a custom gold-trimmed Cadillac convertible, with Earl driving and confetti cannons going off as she stepped onto a red carpet. The entire town showed up. Former classmates, estranged cousins, half the city council, even the mayor. Harold and Vanessa were not invited. Local news outlets covered the event live. Mildred gave a toast under a chandelier made of recycled gold from her mine. To every woman who was told she was too old, too plain, or too dependent, this mine is for you. We don't dig for gold, we build it ourselves. The room erupted in applause. Earl kissed her hand. She winked. They danced to Patsy Cline while drones recorded from above, live-streamed to millions. The hashtag #GoldMineGranny trended on Twitter for 3 days. Vanessa watched all of it, from her phone screen in a hotel room she could barely afford. Her influencer dreams had fizzled. After Mildred went public with the prenup, Vanessa became a meme. #GoldDigger versus gold miner. Brands dropped her. Sponsors ghosted her. But she wasn't done. In desperation, Vanessa teamed up with a sleazy tabloid reporter to write a scandalous exposé. The real Mildred, greed, power, and gold. They gathered photos, exaggerated quotes, and twisted facts. She even tried to bribe one of Mildred's mine workers. But Mildred was ready. She had surveillance footage, signed testimonials, and a media-savvy lawyer named Trina, also a former beauty queen turned attorney who owed Mildred a favor. The exposé flopped. Instead, the countersuit Mildred filed for defamation landed Vanessa in court. The judge, a woman in her 60s, stared over her glasses at Vanessa. "Ms. Vanessa Kingsley, you have 30 days to issue a public apology and pay restitution, or you'll be held in contempt." Vanessa's lip trembled. The courtroom chuckled. Mildred didn't gloat. She simply stood, walked past Vanessa, and dropped a gold coin in her hand. "Next time," she said, "try earning it." 6 months later, the mine was running itself. Mildred had stepped back from daily operations, handing the reins to a group of local women she'd trained herself. It was now a worker-owned cooperative. Each miner had a stake. Earl asked her one evening on the porch, "So what now, Goldie?" She smiled, watching the sun dip behind the hills. "I think it's time for a goodbye," she said. "Not a sad one. A golden one." She sold her remaining shares, donated millions to local schools and women's shelters, and bought a vintage Airstream. She and Earl hit the road, stopping at small towns, giving talks, sharing stories. Her last post on social media read, They called me a gold digger, but I was digging for purpose. Turns out I struck both. The town of Willow Glen erected a statue of her, Mildred in overalls holding a pickaxe, smiling. It was titled, "The Woman Who Dug Deeper." The room was opulent yet tense. Mildred, dressed in a perfectly tailored ivory suit, sat calmly at the head of the long mahogany table. On her left was her lawyer, an impenetrable fortress of legal wisdom. On her right, a financial advisor who handled assets that now stretched across multiple states and industries. Vanessa was present, of course, dressed like a grieving widow, black veil, crocodile handbag, forced tears. Behind her were a few hangers-on from the society club, eager to see if Mildred's empire would soon be theirs. The lawyer cleared his throat. Per the instructions of the deceased, Harold Whitmore, and revised upon joint consent prior to the marriage, this is the final reading of the estate will. Vanessa smirked, already picturing herself on a yacht in Monaco. To Vanessa, I leave exactly one item, the lawyer continued. The prenup, framed as a reminder that gold diggers sometimes hit bedrock. The room gasped. Vanessa blinked, horrified. This must be a joke. That can't be real. The lawyer handed her the framed prenup, mounted on gold leaf parchment. Vanessa's face went ghost white. The rest of the estate, he said calmly, transfers solely to Mildred Harper Whitmore. Business holdings, real estate, mineral rights, and full controlling shares in Whitmore Minerals LLC. Vanessa screamed. A visceral, primal, utterly unsophisticated wail that echoed down the marble hallway. Chapter 18, The Public Meltdown. Vanessa's meltdown was spectacular. She marched straight out of the room, heels clacking like gunfire, and stormed into the front yard of the Whitmore estate where local reporters had already gathered. I built this family, she shrieked. That woman is a fraud. A fraud. Cameras clicked. She seduced my father for money. And now she's taken everything. Mildred stepped outside, serene as a spring morning. Her silver hair caught the sunlight like a halo. Darling, she said sweetly, addressing Vanessa, I didn't take anything. Your father gave me everything. Because I gave him peace. Something your drama never could. Vanessa lunged, but security gently restrained her. The footage went viral. #GoldMineGranny was trending within hours. Memes flew across the internet. Late-night hosts couldn't stop talking about the senior citizen who outsmarted the schemer. Mildred, meanwhile, made a quiet donation of $5 million to women's shelters and elder empowerment programs, cementing her as a beloved matriarch, not just of her family, but of a movement. Chapter 19, Justice in Pearls. In court, Vanessa tried to sue. Emotional distress, she claimed. Fraud. Manipulation. But her legal team was no match for Mildred's. Mildred arrived at the courthouse wearing her signature pearls, calm and composed. Her testimony was powerful, even poetic. Love is not about transaction. And greed, like gold, must be refined under pressure. I simply let the furnace do its job. The judge ruled in Mildred's favor. Vanessa was fined for defamation and ordered to pay Mildred's legal fees. Later, at a small press event, Mildred was asked what advice she'd give to women like her. Never underestimate your worth, she said. And never sign away your power even when it looks like love. 5 years later, Mildred stood on a stage at the Women in Business Gala, now an annual event funded by the Whitmore Harper Foundation. Her mining company had expanded into renewable energy and sustainable mining practices. A scholarship in Harold's name supported young geologists nationwide. A wing in the local museum bore Mildred's name. As she addressed the crowd, a silver cane in one hand and a golden clicker in the other, she smiled. They called me a gold digger. Maybe I was. But what I dug for wasn't wealth, it was value. And once I struck it, I made sure no woman would ever have to settle again. Cue applause. Cue standing ovation. Backstage, a young entrepreneur approached her nervously. Miss Whitmore, I want to be just like you. Mildred grinned. Then start digging, sweetheart. And don't stop till you hit your own gold.